National Football League. He is our own John McMullen, who has his mock draft. He only does one. And he's ready to fire, as the Philly Godfather would say. John, how are you, pal?
Doing well. How are you guys?
I know you don't
Great.
sound. Wait a minute, John. You sound a little on the. Are you low energy right now? Have you left it all in the locker room?
He's conserving energy.
I'll tell you, it's not low energy. It's frustration from dealing with the constant DMs with the GM's nephews, friends, cousin, heard, blah blah blah. It's from dealing with all that.
Also, DMs with the GM. That sounds like a new show. Hey, coming up right after Tony Bruno on Sirius XM 211, the Dan Patrick Channel. DM with the GM.
With your host, John McMullen.
John McMullen. Come on down, John.
That's not a bad, once we get the entire channel going, built around the Tony Bruno show, we can go with that. That's a hell of a title, actually.
Not so fast, my friend. It's the Dan Patrick
Baby
Channel.
steps here,
Come on,
John.
man. What do you mean
Jesus.
take over the channel? This isn't a takeover.
Keep
No,
that-
I didn't say take over the channel.
Yeah, keep that low, will you?
I don't want to take over Dan Patrick.
I hate when there's takeovers. You know, they always have the takeovers, like when teams go into other teams' stadiums, and it's the takeover. The Bills Mafia comes in.
Takeover,
Yeah, exactly. Not the takeout. Not everybody offers that, and that really ticks me off.
All right, I got to get to this first thing in your mock draft, which I dove into the other day. You have the Miami Dolphins trading up to 3 with Detroit, which I could see happening. But you have them doing that to take Justin Herbert from Oregon, not Tua. Explain that.
Well, a couple things. One, Justin Herbert, I think NFL people like him a lot more than draft Twitter /fans. So that's number one. I mean, he's going to be a top 10 pick either way. Mm-hmm. So it comes down to the health of Tua. And that's the curveball that none of us really know. And none of us know which teams have taken him off their particular boards because of the concern of his hip and his long-term prospects to stay healthy. I don't think there's any question completely healthy Tua, who didn't get injured, didn't have any issues, he'd be going 1 or 2 in this draft. You can even make the argument that he would go above Joe Burrow. But the fact that there's concerns, and there's real concerns over the hip, and we'll see. I mean, they're going to trade up, and you've heard that smoke screen over the past couple days, and the fact that they might trade up to go get an offensive tackle. Well,
I don't buy that.
Yeah, I don't buy that for a second. I mean, there are dumb teams, and people have done dumb things. There's no question about that. But you don't trade up to get an offensive tackle in a year where 4 offensive tackles are going to go in the top 10. That just doesn't make any sense. That doesn't pass the smell test. So I think they're going to ultimately go the safe route and trade up to ensure they keep Herbert away from the Chargers.
John McMullen breaking it down, shaking it up, flipping it. So now, do you like how far into your mock draft do you think it goes off the rails and then you rip it up and say, screw this, I wasted all this time for this?
Pick 3.
Pick 3, no question. I mean, that's the linchpin pick of it all. We are, and by the way, even the last couple days, you've had that restart of the number 2 pick with the Redskins, and they're trying to trade out. So you've got all this over the past 48 hours. Ultimately, I think that's nonsense. And Burrow's going to go 1, and Chase Young's going to go 2. And then the fun starts, because the Lions do want out of that 3rd pick. And I think understandably so, because they don't want a quarterback. They're not going to take a quarterback, even though you could argue they could, because Matthew Stafford is getting older, and you can always talk about the heir apparent. But they're not going in that direction. So you have the Dolphins at 5. You have the Chargers at 6. They both need quarterbacks desperately. And you try to convince them to come up. That's what the Giants are doing at number 4 as well. The problem is, obviously, 3. It's easier to do that than 4.
Yeah, now you got a lot of offensive tackles, obviously, starting with Wirfs for the Giants. Then Wills from Alabama you have going ahead of, and then Thomas also ahead of Becton. That's kind of off the board too. A lot of people like Becton a little bit earlier. But the thing that really caught me off guard was Derek Brown, the big defensive tackle from Auburn. You have him falling all the way to 19. So that's that guy that we'll be looking at. If there was a green room and they would all be sitting there, he'd be the guy left, watching everybody get up and, go meet the commissioner.
Yeah, and I struggled. It's interesting you bring that up, Harry, because that's the pick I struggled with the most.
Well, I dove deep in this thing, man.
Yeah, if he gets past 7 in Carolina, he might go there, Carolina, and then you don't have an issue. But then you try, if he does, if Simmons is there, and they go in a different direction, then you start to think, okay, where's he going to fall to? And where is a natural fit? And there aren't a ton of natural fits in between there, other than he's a really good player. He's a top 10 talent, and a lot of people like him, but there's such a necessity for offensive tackles. I got 4 going in the top 14, I think. And there's such a necessity for quarterbacks that they get pushed up the board. We've talked about the depth of the wide receivers in this class. And a lot of organizations just have different needs and different necessities, and it happens every year. If you talk to people right now, they'll say, blah, blah, blah is a first-round pick. You got 47 first-round picks. Well, there's only 32 picks, so somebody's got to fall. And unfortunately for him, he might be one of those guys if he gets past Carolina.
Now, we have breaking news, which I was not aware of. And that, according to our buddy Bearcat AJ in Cincinnati, he says Todd McShay will not be on the ESPN draft coverage because he's recovering from COVID-19. Did you know that, Aaron?
No, I didn't know that.
I did not know that.
No.
Did you know that, John? So we won't be able to see
Todd,
Frank Caliendo saying, Todd.
Yeah, Todd himself tweeted that a little bit earlier this afternoon. So he's not going to be part of the broadcast, unfortunately. And it's going to be an interesting broadcast because you have ESPN and the NFL Network meshing together because of the situation. And the NFL Network studios are essentially closed here in Jersey and California. So they have to do the one broadcast from Bristol, and everybody was going to come together for that broadcast. And unfortunately, Todd got diagnosed with COVID-19, so he's not going to be able to be a part of it. And we're all hoping he's okay. I think that's the big one.
Well, the one thing we do see, though, in many cases, especially with well-known people, is that for the most part, they're getting better. The whole thing about everybody dying, obviously a lot of people are dying, but most people who get it, especially Chris Cuomo, did you see he was like Lazarus coming out of the tomb from his basement.
Chris put, it's interesting because Chris made a big deal about coming up from his basement. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Yeah, I saw it.
You don't see me posting any videos of me coming out of the basement.
I come out of this basement 5 days a week. Jesus. Hey, John, I saw where you said, 13 could be a spot where the Eagles move up to with San Francisco. And that would obviously be to get a big wide receiver like a Ruggs type. What would you say the chances are that could happen? And 2, you got him selecting Kenneth Murray, the linebacker. That's because the top 4 wide receivers are all gone? They go linebacker?
Yeah, ultimately, I think they're going to have to go up to get one of the 4 receivers. And if not, I think they like Brandon Ayuk. They like Jalen Reagor. But I don't think they would take them at 21.
They could trade back to get those guys, right?
Yeah, they could trade back. The problem is, and I got them trading back into the first round. I don't think anybody else has that. People forget about that. But so you could have 2 first-round picks and go about it that way. I do think ultimately if they're forced to stay at 21, they're going to go in a different direction than wide receiver. But, that's the thing with Howie Roseman. He said consistently this offseason, consistently, we need to get younger. We need more draft picks. And he already gave up 2 to get Darius Slay because, remember, coming off that Carson Wentz trade, they had to do so much to get up in that draft that a couple years where they didn't have a lot of draft capital, so they haven't had a lot of draft picks. And now they finally have the cannon loaded again. and he wants draft picks. He wants to get younger, but he's also antsy. And his history says the one thing we can say is, he might trade up, he might trade down. He's probably not going to pick at 21. That's just his history. He moves. And the only issue is you need a dance partner. So, I think people think it's really easy, and you snap your fingers and say, okay, player's not here that we want, let's go down. Well, if somebody doesn't want to come up to that spot at that particular moment, can't necessarily do it. And that's where, if he's forced to pick at 21, those top 4 receivers are gone. That's where I think a Murray would come into it.
Now, John, of course, the big story today, on the eve or the morning of draft, is everybody showing their studios. All the GMs are showing their facilities. The Bears look like it's a sex dungeon and they're going to make a porn down there. Well, they have been getting rammed hard since the selection of the quarterback here in Philly a couple of years ago. I mean, nobody's been getting rammed harder than the Chicago Bears. Have you seen the setups? Howie Roseman here. The Giants have been mocked a lot. Gettleman's set up. Now that's what we're doing. I feel like we need he's no longer with us, but the guy from Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, who just died last year, should be doing let's go do a TMZ. And
Robin Leach. Yeah, we can do Lifestyle.
Robin Leach. And now in Chicago, we enter the domain of the Chicago Bears, where...
Well, did you see, I just tweeted that. Did you see John Snyder knock down 2 walls in his house?
In Seattle? Wow. Yep.
Yeah. Knocked down 2 walls in a house. I joked that I asked my wife to do that. She gave me the FU. But, I mean, he's got 25 screens set up.
25 screens?
These guys are unbelievable. They it's the draft. I think we're all excited about it, especially now because there's nothing else as far as the sports world. But I don't think you need to knock down 2 walls and have 25 screens, but that's where John Snyder is.
By the way, we have breaking news now from the presumptive number 1 overall pick, Joe Burrow. This is just in. He now has posted a picture of the food secured from his hometown, Athens, Ohio. Buffalo Wild Wings ahead of the big night. Let's go. #AD. So there you have it. Buffalo Wild Wings already arriving in Joe Burrow's house. That's just the level of excitement now has been ratcheted up. You think he's paying for that with that free plug?
I wonder what he got paid for that.
You think he paid for Buffalo Wild Wings?
No, I think he's getting paid.
There's no doubt about it. He's already got his first sponsorship deal.
He's got a sponsor, the number 1 pick. Our friend Eitan Sander, he asked me, there's all kind of prop bets surrounding the NFL draft. One of them is, are we going to see pizza or not? Mm-hmm. I said there's a pretty good chance we're going to see pizza. Yeah. I wonder if there was a Buffalo Wild Wings.
Well, we have our first Buffalo Wild Wings sighting in Joe Burrow's house.
I wonder if Bob Menery will be sitting next to him going, roar! No. Hey, John, what did you make of the Jerry Jeudy rumors about the injury that might have him falling back?
Yeah, I mean, that's real. Well, it depends how you phrase it. I mean, everybody in the league is aware. He had a meniscus trim earlier in his career at Alabama. So everybody knew that at the combine in
Tony's
February.
had one of those, too.
I've had a lot of trim. Not lately, though. You got to be careful. I've had non-contact trim. That's pretty hard to do, Harry.
You can't have it, and it's
the
safest
kind.
A little bit more difficult in this environment. You're 6 feet away.
Right.
It's tough to do a meniscus trim. Never mind any kind.
No,
of
I had a meniscus
trim.
torn out. Mine wasn't trimmed. Mine was completely cut out. I'm a man. I don't do any of this trim stuff. You're going to go into my knee. You get that sumbitch out.
You get that thing out. But the problem is, if you're an NFL player, if you get that thing out, then you got longevity issues, and then people start talking about the second contract, and that's really the question about Jerry Jeudy. But everybody I talk to says he's not going to fall that much. So we'll see. I mean, ultimately, it's not new news to people in the NFL. It was new news to people outside the NFL. It really comes down to individual teams. Some teams will look at it long term and say, well, this is a guy probably we can't count on for 6-7 years. But you know what? in today's NFL, it's become more like college football anyway. You have like these 3-year windows, and then you got to revamp. So I'm not sure it'll have that much of an impact.
John McMullen, he's got his mock draft, and I'm mocking the draft, which is one of my specialties. I'm consistent every single year, Harry. I don't put together mock drafts. I just mock drafts and mock draft light, which has fewer picks, and it's less filling.
Fewer carbs, too.
And fewer
2.6.
Well,
we need mock draft light. We need quick mock draft. We need 5 minutes between picks. We got to get through this quickly.
I agree. The 15 minutes, and I'm going to pour you one right now, John, to get you ready for tonight. Pop that baby open right now, Harry. It is draft day.
Canned beer.
It is draft day. Did you watch draft day, the Kevin Costner?
Yeah, I did.
Did I ever tell you my Kevin Costner story from the Super Bowl that was in New York?
No.
At MetLife Stadium.
Did you meet him? Because Robin and I were there, but we were hanging in the city. We stayed away from Jersey.
I did meet him in a way. He was going through Radio Row with Jennifer Gardner, who, by the way, is fetching in person.
I got to tell you, though, I saw her once at a Sunday morning up in the Pacific Palisades. I went up there for breakfast one day when I was living in L.A., and I saw Jennifer Gardner lives in Pacific Palisades, and she was sitting at the table next to me with no makeup on.
Not good?
Good, but not spectacular. She's a lot of women transform when they don't have makeup on. Jesus. You're saying, okay.
Most women transform.
Makeup,
it's
no,
very
I mean, there's
rare.
a lot of women that are naturally pretty without makeup.
Really?
Makeup.
Oh,
where are they?
Yeah, really.
There's some of them.
Yeah, I'm not
few
gonna
and far
criticize
between.
Jennifer Gardner. I don't, I'm not in that position.
She cleans up really well. She cleans up really well.
Could criticize Margot Robbie, I imagine.
No, I don't. It's not my style. I just make observations. They're not criticisms.
Right.
These are observations, what the human mind does, no matter who you are.
Now, Johnny, you're guaranteeing that Andre Dillard will be the starting left tackle for the Eagles next season?
Yeah, I'm guaranteeing it. For 2 reasons. And by the way, Manish made the Jets beat writers creating more, and that's another thing with the DMs coming in. But I mean, if you're Howie Roseman, you're talking. This is a calendar year. You're telling me you traded up to get Andre Dillard last year in the draft, and you're going to give up on him 365 days later because he cried at training camp, allegedly. I mean, these are the things people are throwing out there. And I just find it bizarre, just from that standpoint. I mean, I've yelled at people who say J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who was, I'm not trying to defend the kid. He was really bad last year. But you don't give up on premium picks after 1 year. That's just, if you do, you're going to lose your job as a GM pretty quick.
The only premium pick that they should have given up by now, and you'll find out again tonight in Chicago, is the Bears pick from 3 years ago.
And by the way, Tony, you bring up Ryan Pace and Mitchell Trubisky. He's still hanging on to that pick for that reason.
Yeah.
It's so difficult to admit you're wrong. Everybody knows he's wrong. He knows he's wrong. He knows he made a mistake. But if he admits it, he's basically putting a death sentence on himself as a GM. So you cross your fingers, you give him chance after chance after chance. Unfortunately, it's probably the old adage, you have to admit a mistake before you can solve that mistake, which I think that is true. But that's easier said than done if you're a GM in the league.
There it is, ladies and gentlemen.